All right, I'm back, and as promised, we're going to do our hopefully pretty quick demonstration of thermodynamics. So to do that, I have a soda can here and a ring stand here, and my assistant Bennett here, and a blowtorch because that kind of thing is fun, right? And oh, Bennett, cue the nerdy dad joke.
Daddy, are we pyromaniacs?
Yes, we are, son. Oh, bad, terrible joke, full of them. So what we're going to do is we're going to heat up the can and not burn down the garage in the process. Okay?
Yeah.
And so think about what we've been discussing. Think of the can as the system, okay? And the air inside the can also being the system. And everything outside of that can is the surroundings, okay? And what are we doing? We are putting heat into the system, right?
Yeah.
Gotta make sure this isn't too hot because I will burn a hole in the can
Like you did.
like I've done before. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this system.
Oh no, it's burning.
Oh, uh-oh. Yeah, burnt a hole in it. Okay, that's okay. I have more than one can.
Yeah, more than one can.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to heat the system, and then I'm going to change the temperature. I'm going to change the surroundings. Okay, let's get that. We got to dial that way down. There we go. Okay.
How did that smell?
That's smell of burnt, probably burnt paint. So I'm heating up the system. I'm going to put it in this bucket of cold water, and we'll see what happens. Okay, keep your glasses on. Now, in the meantime, while that's heating up, I just want to tell you, I watched this webinar in between Journal Club and lecture today on the chemistry of espresso. And it was super cool. I mean, it was really nerdy, but it was, cool in a nerdy way. It was kind of even a little too nerdy for me, but it was going all in about the water quality and how the water quality directly affects, is it burning a hole? No. The water quality directly affects the overall flavor profile and whether or not it's too hard or not hard enough, the pH and so forth. All right, let's give it a shot. All right, let's see what happens. Okay, guys, you ready?
Yeah.
All right. Oh no! Woo!
Nice.
Did you hear that?
Yeah. But I couldn't see it.
Check that out. Whoa. Thermodynamics right there. Now, no, I got to get back to my lecture, but thank you. I got to remember to turn off the torch. Okay. Let's think about why that happened and how that happened and what made that happen. And I'll let you think about that as I make my way back. Hey, no, put the drill down. All right, I'll be right back. Yeah, can you see me now?
Yes.
Yes, okay, perfect. What we're going to do is, we are going to, let me switch my screen around. So this is Bennett. He's 6. This is Lucas. This is my videographer. He's 8. And we have a bass guitar, and we have an amp head, and we have a speaker, amplifier, and I have taped a mirror to the speaker head right here, okay? And Bennett has a little laser light that he is going to shine on the mirror. Show him that. Show him that. Okay, get on there. Oh, and you see how it shows? It should show it. Yeah, a little dot right there. Okay. Here, Lucas, you hold this. We're gonna see what happens when we put some sound through that speaker head.
What's the control temp, Carl?
What's that?
I said, what is the control temp?
What is a control temp?
Yeah, what's the temperature of the mirror starting out?
Ah, well, tell him. Let's see. What's the temperature of the mirror, Bennett? What's it say on there?
14.8 degrees Celsius.
I don't know about that. I'll get back to you on that, Matt.
Okay.
You guys may want to turn down the volume at first, because I don't know how loud it's going to be. I don't want to blow your ears out. So, okay. Let's get this thing rolling. You guys see it?
Yeah.
I'll try it. Okay. Now we're gonna try to get it on the wall. Maybe that'd be easier to see. Maybe. All right. Keep it on the dot. All right, now give me a minute to jump back to my room, and we'll talk about it. Okay. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So what I want to do now is focus what we've learned a little bit into what I really enjoy is coffee. And again, this is caffeine, and coffee is a solution.
Yeah.
And the solution that we make is dependent on all different types of factors, okay? One factor is going to be the temperature, right? As we know, temperature affects the rate of reactions. Temperature also affects gas exchange, right? The size of the actual grinds, the coffee grinds, makes a big difference in terms of the taste, in terms of the extraction, right? Because coffee really is just, from a chemistry perspective, an extraction. We're taking fruit, which is why coffee, if anyone asks me what my favorite fruit is, I say coffee, because coffee is not really a bean, right? It looks like a bean, but it's a berry. Now, we're extracting all these different flavors from that berry. And to do that, you have to have different parameters to get different flavors, right? So temperature is one, grind size is one. Of course, your ratio of coffee to water is going to be a contributing factor. The less coffee you have to water, the weaker it's going to be. And then also the type of roast will contribute. And I have two different types of beans. So if you're coffee drinkers and you like to buy your beans whole, you might know that some beans are really shiny on the outside. And I don't know if I can really do this.
Greasy beans.
Greasy beans, yes. I don't know if you can see that shimmer, but yeah, it's probably not gonna show through. But these aren't the same. This one is shiny, greasy. This one is not. And for the longest time, I thought that the ones that weren't greasy were just over roasted. And it just like evaporated all the oils. But then I talked to my good friend Jared. I don't know if you guys have heard of Refuge here, but it's a local coffee company. I met Jared, the owner, at Blue Granite Climbing Gym because he used to have a little shop there. Yeah. And he was telling me that actually when you over roast the beans, you roast them so long that the oils inside start leaching out, right? And so when you see these greasy beans, it's usually from beans that have been roasted in bulk and just kind of just roasted the heck out of them, okay? So I prefer to get the beans that are more like artisan roasted, but those differences are going to really contribute to the overall flavor of the coffee, because your roasting is what translates all of the sugars and proteins in that initial berry into the 800 plus flavor molecules that are then derived. So that's why we take that green berry and we roast it into this black thing, because it changes the molecules in that berry. And then when we extract those molecules out, that's what gives the flavor. Okay.
Wait, is beans a grape?
No. Beans are a legume. But so so those are the different components. And I am by no means an expert here. I do know that Alex was a barista. So feel free to hop in if I say anything wrong or if I miss anything. But what I wanted to go through is my technique for what I think is a really good cup of coffee. And I will preface this by saying that I went through this process for my wife, and I made her a cup of coffee, and she's like, oh, it almost like it tastes sweet. And to me, that was the ultimate compliment, because coffee, if it's done right, should give you these actual, not like candy sweet, but different sweet flavors. Problem is, the way we make coffee generally extracts out a bunch of the bitter compounds with it. And so it masks all the really, in my opinion, wonderful flavors, okay? And again, a lot of this comes down to preference. Water quality is also going to affect things. So if you have really soft water, so not much minerals, especially like bicarbonate in there, then you're going to pull out a lot of acids from those beans, and they're not going to get neutralized by the bicarbonate. And so it's going to have an acidic, kind of a sour taste to it, okay? Now, if you have a lot of bicarbonate, then it's going to neutralize some of those acids and get rid of the sour, but it's going to give it kind of a chalky aftertaste, because think of bicarbonate as kind of like an antacid, right? And antacids, Tums and stuff are really chalky. So it's good to have a little bit of mineral in your water. You know, you don't want to get purified water per se. So that's going to make a big difference as well. And so I hear sweet is good, over extracted is bitter, under extracted is sour. Yes. So if you under extract, and when we extract, coffee has about a 30% solubility, okay? And what people usually try to aim for is between 18 to, I think, 22%, okay? And if you get an insufficient solubility or insufficient extraction, it's going to have, yes, this sour taste because you're getting most of the acids coming out. And what contributes to that? The grind size. Now, I don't have a fancy burr grinder, which gives you a nice uniform grind. All I have is a blade grinder, which is not great because it gives you a heterogeneous size of grinds. Right? You get some big ones, you get some really powdery ones, and then you get some in between, okay? And so really what we want to aim for is a uniform grind size. And so to do that, I use my pestle and mortar, okay? That way I can control exactly how coarse or how fine my coffee is. And like Alex said in the chat, if it's too coarse, it's going to be weak and it's going to be kind of on that sour side. If it's too fine, it's going to be bitter, right? Because you're extracting out more of those bitter flavors. You're also getting some of like the silt, that sediment at the bottom too, okay? So I only do this for my first cup of coffee in the morning because it is kind of labor intensive. And then after that, I do my regular process. And I really can notice the difference. Another thing that I mentioned is your ratio of coffee beans to water. Now, at least from what I've read, a good starting point is about 28 grams of beans to 400 mils of water. And then you adjust from there based on the type of bean you have, the grind size, your own preferences. I've been doing around 40 grams per 400 mils. And so I use my food scale.
That he got from Christmas.
Yes, I bought myself a food scale for Christmas because that's the only way I get presents for Christmas. But now you're going to tare it. What does tearing do?
It makes the bowl like 0.
Yes, so we've tared our weigh boat, if you will, and we're going to measure out 40 grams.
40.
Perfect. And then Bennett usually likes to do the grinding. I let him go until he gets tired and then I finish it off. So I'm going to let him start to grind. And while he's doing that, I'll tell you that I've experimented with hand grinding and then also using my blade grinder. And there's definitely a difference in taste. So this seems like a lot of pretentious effort. And my wife usually rolls her eyes when she comes in the kitchen and sees this, but it makes a difference. And if you're a coffee snob, which I am not, I'll drink any coffee because I'm a fiend. But if you're a coffee snob, then this is the way to go, all right? Also, this is not essential, but this is called a separatory funnel. So if you guys take organic chemistry next year, you'll probably use this a lot, assuming we have face-to-face labs. But essentially, we would also use this if we do a titration for our acid-base lab that we would do later on this quarter. And essentially what you have is, this is called a stopcock, and you turn this, keep grinding, and that opens up the flow, and you can adjust the rate. So you can have it go drop by drop, or a bigger stream, or a narrower stream. And the reason I like this is, one, because it brings me back into the lab. This is not used. I bought it, at least, I think I bought it brand new on Amazon. So it probably doesn't have any heinous chemicals that have gone through this in a previous chemistry lab, I hope. But what it allows, what are you?
And you have to, when it's going down, you have to have the cap off so it can have airflow.
Oh yes, airflow. Yeah, you don't want to leave the cap on because then it will stop flowing. But anyway, the reason I got this is because when we start pouring over the coffee grinds, you want a nice thin stream of water, okay? Because if you just pour it all on, you don't get a nice bloom. And the bloom is important because we want the coffee grinds to kind of rise up and release the carbon dioxide that is a byproduct of the roasting, okay? And what this allows me to do is to dial in a very specific stream so that I can get a wonderful bloom, and I don't have to stay. I can, you know, like usually I'm doing this and the kids are asking for a bagel or milk or whatever. And so I got to like walk away and multitask, and I can just leave it under my separatory funnel. How's it going? Okay, let me finish this off. I'm going to finish this part off, and then I'll show you kind of what it looks like. Hopefully you can see. I have developed an appreciation for Native Americans that had to do this for like to grind their cornmeal and stuff all day, because this is actually a pretty good arm workout. It's very tiring. And side note, if you guys have ever gone out past LTCC's campus to the river, there's a rock there, and I can't think of the name of I think it's called, maybe it's Indian rock, Native American rock, but it's a big giant rock in this field, and it has all these holes in there that are presumed to be where the Native Americans were grinding their corn and stuff. So it's a bit of an archaeological site. Does anybody know what I'm talking about?
No.
Not you. No.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen it in person, but I've seen pictures of it.
Yeah, so it's neat. But yeah, this is a little bit of effort, and again, this is why I just do this with my first cup of coffee.
Have you ever experimented with like doing like a combination of using like the blade grind and the mortar and pestle? Because I would think maybe you could like get it started with like the blade grinder and then do the rest with the mortar and pestle.
I have tried that, but really I find that what it does is the blade grinder gets these, it's even initially it'll get these small pieces in there, and then I've gone and tried to break out some of the bigger ones, but I still get a lot of these ultra fine particles that that it just gives me a less desirable overall taste. And I mean, again, it's subjective, right? I mean, I think it's still good if you do the grinder, but it's not as good. And this is about brewing the perfect cup of coffee.
That method would be really effective if you were brewing espresso, because you want a super fine grind on that. But for the pour over, you're going to want it more coarse.
Yeah. So let's see if you can see.
That smells wonderful.
Oh, doesn't it? So, yeah, it's not really showing up, but the idea is that you get a nice consistent grind. There's a few pieces in here that are bigger than others, but on the whole, it's much better than that really fine stuff that Alex said is more espresso style grind. So now he's going to do the second part. Okay. And during this time, I wanted to talk about how does caffeine work? Does anybody know the mechanism of my favorite molecule?
I
have a very vague idea of it because I did learn about it at one point, but I've forgotten a lot. But I'm pretty sure it's that like molecule blocks the receptor for the hormone that makes you feel tired.
Yeah, so not particularly a hormone, but this molecule is similar enough to adenosine. Adenosine, you guys might know, is what makes up ATP, so adenosine triphosphate. And that is our energy producing molecule. It's when we go cellular respiration, right? We breathe in oxygen, and that goes through these different steps to eventually yield ATP. Now, when your brain is thinking a lot, like in chemistry class, you are exhausting a lot of ATP in your neurons. And so what happens is you get byproducts. The ATP breaks down, it loses the phosphate, becomes AMP or ADP, adenosine diphosphate. And then even some of the adenosine will pop off. When the adenosine is free in your brain, it starts to bind to specific adenosine receptors. And when enough receptors have been bound, it tells you that you're tired. It downregulates things like dopamine. Okay, so it's a neurotransmitter. Now, caffeine, because it's similar enough in structure to adenosine, it will also bind those receptors. So when you go to sleep at night, you flush off all the adenosine off of those receptors. And then you wake up and you feel refreshed, right? You pop out of bed like a piece of toast and you're ready to take on the day. And then you drink that coffee and the caffeine binds to those receptors. And so you don't get that cue that, okay, now I'm awake, but now I'm starting to kind of calm down a little bit. You still have that alertness. Now the caffeine binding to it also is going to lead to an upregulation of dopamine, which is interesting. And that's what gives you kind of that, okay, yeah, somewhat euphoric feeling. Now, because the caffeine is similar but not exact, it doesn't activate the adenosine receptor. It just binds to it.
Do you press and hold to turn it off?
Yes. So what happens is that it's competitive inhibition. All it does is it just doesn't let the adenosine get here. And so your brain after a while says, I'm not binding adenosine properly. I'm just going to make some more receptors. And so your brain cells start sprouting out more adenosine receptors. And now you have caffeine tolerance. So that initial cup of coffee that made you nice and alert is not going to have that same effect. Hold on. I'm going to lose my train of thought. Now, if you drink coffee chronically like I do, you have so many adenosine receptors that now you're below baseline of alertness. So you drink coffee and you do that just to get you to the point where you would be if you didn't drink coffee to begin with. So it becomes a vicious cycle and becomes kind of pointless. So if you only drink coffee, say once a week on the weekends, you'd have a much greater effect. You'd start pruning off all of those receptors and you'd be back in that nice, alert, concentrated concentration phase that caffeine is supposed to elicit.
Do you know why many doctors and therapists recommend to people who have anxiety to not drink caffeine?
Yes, because caffeine, the adenosine receptors aren't just in your neurons, they're in your heart, they're in your kidneys. So when you're blocking those adenosine receptors, it's telling your kidneys that you need to pee because it's not binding adenosine. It tells it to kind of slow back. It also tells your heart that it needs to pump more because the adenosine is competing with the adenosine that keeps it at a nice rate. So with anxiety, a lot of times you have an increased heart rate, right? You feel like, Now, if you then add caffeine on top of that, that can have a synergistic effect and make your heart rate even worse. It's certainly not going to make the anxiety feel better. And that's why if you do drink too much coffee and you aren't desensitized to it like I am, you can get jittery if you drink too much, because then it will start affecting the adenosine binding to your heart.
And also, I drink kombucha in the morning.
Yes, he drinks kombucha.
If we have it.
But I don't let him drink it in the evening because kombucha has a little bit of caffeine because I make it with black tea. But it's a very minuscule amount. So I don't think I'm stunting his growth. But that in mind, when I was a little kid, my parents gave me instant coffee, which is terrible, right? You should never give anyone instant coffee. It tastes disgusting.
What's instant coffee?
You don't even want to know. It's that bad. And so that shaped my expectations of coffee until I was in college and then met friends who actually drank real brewed coffee. And then my life was changed from there, right? So, all right, we are at a point now where the beans are finely ground and I put them in. This is a Chemex. It was designed by a chemist and it's made out of borosilicate and it's supposed to be shaped optimally. It's got this really fancy filter that doesn't have any types of extra chemicals that will add to the flavor of the coffee. So I don't know. I use it again because I kind of nerd out about this stuff, but you know, it's not essential, I don't think.
And you probably have seen some pictures that I took of the big bloom.
Oh, I haven't showed them any pictures of my big bloom, but I can if you want, if it doesn't show up very well here. Now, what I'm going to do is, because we've been learning about heat transfer, right, and thermochemistry, I'm going to heat up my water so that I kind of prime the cup so that it's hot, because we want to maintain as much thermal energy as we possibly can, because
he likes it hot.
Yeah, because what did we say about temperature and gases? All of coffee really is what you smell, a little bit of what you taste, but mostly what you smell. And so that has to be vapors coming out. And the higher the temperature, what do we know about the solubility of gas? It goes down.
The solubility.
Right? So there's going to be more of that aroma coming out the higher the temperature is. That's why if you get a big old venti coffee from Starbucks and it takes a little while, you get down to the last third and it's not really hot and it just tastes crappy. That's why, okay? Now, so I'm microwaving, the water's ready. What I'm going to do is I'm gonna pour some of this water into my Chemex to get that primed with heat as well. And then I'm going to pour just a little bit on the top of the grinds, okay?
Yeah.
Just enough to get what's called a bloom. And if you have fresh roasted coffee, you should get a nice bloom. I don't know if you can see that. There should be lots of nice bubbles and it should kind of float upward, just like a bloom, like what you think of as a bloom, like a flower. And that's indicative of freshness because all of the carbon dioxide hasn't leached out, right? Over time, the carbon dioxide will come out and so will a lot of the other flavors that we enjoy. And so we let that bloom for about a minute or so. And I usually use my microwave as a timer for the water. And then we're ready to go. And it's 2:50, so if any of you have to go right now, by all means, you're free to go. Class is over. I'm just about done. So if you want to hang on for a few more minutes, we can see what the final product is, okay?
Here's some pictures that I took of the bean.
Yeah, so Bennett's my helper in all kinds of different things.
Like snow
That he really-
plowing.
Yes, he snow plows with me. He does lots of things.
How old are you, Bennett?
I just turned 6 on December 20th.
Now, one important thing to do,
Oh, happy birthday.
make sure your stopcock is closed. Because I poured it before, the water in there, and my stopcock was open, right?
I didn't put it.
Now we are at a temperature of about 80, which is not particularly ideal, but that's about all that I can get with this apparatus. So I'm going to let the water slowly come out. I don't know if you can see that or not. Let's see here. Oh, it's just a little bit of a trickle. There's the picture of the bloom. Yep. Okay. Thanks, Bennett.
Okay.
And I'm just going to let it again kind of continue to
Bloom.
bloom a little bit. you'll see these bubbles that are released. That again is the CO2. We want to get that out of there and let it slowly trickle in.
They're blocking.
And then after a while, because I don't want too much thermal energy to escape into the surroundings, then I'll crank it up a little bit more. But again, it's nice because I can walk away. I can get my cup of coffee or my coffee mug that has the water in it. And it's just doing its thing, right? Okay, now that we've got that bloom that's back, now I'm going to start swirling around to start getting water on all of the grounds or the grind. And
Kind of like that.
once I do that, it's going to look even more bubbly. So let's see if we can see that. See lots of bubbles coming out. And
Also, this is what it looks like when it's like water. That's not what it looks like when it's
now, the reason coffee is so popular is definitely because of the caffeine, right? But the best thing about coffee really is the other stuff, right? And particularly, coffee has a lot of antioxidants, polyphenols. And one of the most important ones is called, oh, you taking a video?
I was taking a picture.
Okay. Chlorogenic acid, okay?
I was taking a picture when it was water.
And this is a lot of, okay, so now it's coming out. This particular molecule, it's a polyphenol, and it's been shown to interact and stop the process, one of the processes that's linked to Parkinson's disease. And I can tell you all about that if there's time. But essentially, if I drink enough coffee, I might be able to stave off dementia. And with 3 boys, I need all the coffee I can get, I think, to prevent that. It also has protective measures against things like prostate cancer. And then again, just generally sopping up all of the free radicals that, you know, bombard our molecules on a daily basis. Okay, so look here. So it's all gone through. I usually give it kind of a squeeze here. And there is our coffee. And I'm going to pour out the hot water here. I'm going to pour this in here. And look at that. And now, yeah, that's good. That's good stuff. So cheers, everyone. It is almost 3 o'clock, but that's not too late. I should be okay. Oh, I see Miranda has her cup. I see Matt. A couple of you guys have some coffee or something else in there, maybe decaf. But cheers, and yeah, you're free to go now. If you want to hang on for a couple minutes, we can talk coffee. I'm here, so let's chat or feel free to go.
What was the temperature of the water when you added it for the bloom and the titration?
So the temperature straight out of the kettle, probably a little bit less than 100 C, because I boil it in that kettle. And by the time you transfer it, it gets between 80 to 90 C. 90 is ambitious. If I can get it that high, then I'm doing well. But yeah.
And what was that like filter that you use? What kind of filter is that you put in the Chemex?
Yeah. So it's a Chemex filter. So it looks like this. And all you do is you pull out a filter, and it's folded into quarters. And you just take one side. Sorry, I could have gone through that. There, and you open it up like that. And I pre-wet it and then I dump it out, and then I just stick it in the Chemex like this and put my grinds in there.
Do you notice a papery taste with the unbleached ones?
No. And well, honestly, I haven't done this whole process using the bleached ones. I've only used this kind of filter, so I can't really say what it tastes like if I used a different one, but that's a good question. These particular filters are supposed to be, like I had said, pretty free of extra chemicals that can leach into the coffee. And so it's not supposed to alter the flavor. But again, not being able to compare it to anything, I'm not quite sure.
I want to like the unbleached ones more than I do, but I feel like they just always make it taste kind of papery. I don't even know if it tastes papery or if it just smells papery, and I just like can't get that out of my nose.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, most of the coffee flavor comes from what we're smelling, right? So it could be that you definitely get that kind of the cellulose and stuff coming out of that paper, and then you're smelling that, and that's going to change the flavor. Yes. Have a good one. Thanks for sticking around. Now, we might continue this. If there's anything I missed, Alex, that you want to talk about or let me know about, if I misspoke or something, maybe we'll have another Cafe Franz session later on. We can certainly talk about coffee when we get into things like the Arrhenius equation, and definitely when we get into entropy. And also, if I were to add creamer to this, it should disperse throughout the entire solution, because that's what things do. The universe is constantly changing and going toward disorder, right? And so we might be able to bring this up in different contexts throughout the quarter, but if not, this is my process, and I hope you enjoyed it. And this is my side.
With like just a typical coffee maker, is the reason why that coffee is bitter because like the water's too hot, or it just floods the filter, or what's the reason why a typical coffee maker makes bitter coffee?
Well, I think it's potentially two reasons. One is how you grind it, right? So most people either
Hand grind it?
No, most people don't hand grind it. Most people are going to either buy it pre-ground, which means it's already lost a lot of its flavors because it was ground who knows how long ago. Or they use a grinder like mine, and you get all those different sized grind, particles. And then with the coffee pot, oftentimes you don't get that initial bloom. Sometimes it just kind of sprays all over it, and so you're not releasing some of the carbon dioxide in there and allowing the extraction of some of the other better flavors that we like. And maybe Alex, do you have anything to add to that?
There's just such a lack of control, like you were saying, with grind size, whether you buy it pre-ground or you use a blade grinder. Most people that make their coffees at home, or even businesses that aren't good coffee shops, aren't going to weigh the beans. They're just going to use like however many tablespoons, which causes a lack of control. Definitely lacking the bloom would make the difference. I think a lot of it would just come down to, in order to make it properly, there are steps that you have to follow, and to just throw coffee into the coffee maker is just not as accurate as if you made it the way that he just did. And most of the time, if you screw up making a cup of coffee, the end result is going to be bitter.
Yeah, my mom is a big coffee drinker, and so I was kind of observing her process this morning, so that I could compare it to like today if we got the chance to do it today. And like I know that like she just uses the scoop in there and does like 3 heaping scoops. And then when I was watching the coffee pot actually make it, you were right. It just kind of splutters the water out and like it flooded the filter.
Mhm. Yeah. And so, again, when we talk about brewing coffee, we're not really brewing it as much as we are extracting it. To brew it, when we brew stuff, you essentially put a bunch of stuff together and you let it kind of just sit, right? You brew beer, you can brew kombucha, right? I have a mother, right? And I put in water and it just sits together and it brews, right? You think of witch's brew, in the cauldron, right? Coffee, it shouldn't be considered a brew. At least I think it should be considered an extraction. And when we take it to this kind of level, which, like I said, it doesn't have, you can have most baristas will use more like a teapot that just has a little skinny nozzle at the end, spout, I guess is what it's called. And it does the same thing, right? But when you think of it as an extraction, it becomes a very different process than just putting, and I have a French press, I have an AeroPress, I have all these different things that can be used to make coffee, and it's like a backpacking French press kind of in a way. But the French press, French press is my least favorite, honestly, because you have to have kind of a coarse, you can't have it super fine, because then when you put the plunger down, if you're not familiar with a French press, right, you throw the grinds in here, you put in the water, you stir it around, and then you put the top on and you push this plunger down, and that kind of pushes the grinds down. So you don't want it super fine because it'll get through that mesh in there. And so again, what I end up with is just a gamish of a bunch of different grind sizes. Some are coarse, some are really fine. And then it tastes really bitter because there's no bloom involved. There's no releasing any of the CO2. And so you're pulling out everything without specific selection.
I didn't know that a French press, like I didn't know if it was supposed to be for coffee or tea, but I guessed that it was for tea, not coffee.
You could probably use it for tea as well.
I totally make loose leaf tea in mine because I broke my tea steeper. You can use them for both.
Yeah. So let's see. I don't know. I have. Yeah. So this is typically what people will use for loose leaf tea, but yes,
Yep,
when that
that's
breaks,
what I use.
yeah, when that breaks, a French press would probably do it. Clearly, it does. So yeah.
Tea doesn't have grounds, does it?
Tea is ground up leaves and herbs and stuff. Yeah.
I feel like there has to be some way that we can make like an espresso AeroPress like pressure lecture. Like it should somehow factor into that stuff. That would be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'll think about that.
I was wondering if we could ever do like anything with cooking and molecular gastronomy.
Potentially, yeah. So I kind of avoided that kind of stuff because I wasn't sure. I didn't want to exclude people that didn't have a fully functioning kitchen and all the cookware and stuff like that. But we could definitely do something like this. And if you have the stuff at home, you can follow along. And if not, you just follow along virtually. That would definitely be an option. I think that that stuff is really cool and fun to do. And AeroPress, they win all kinds of awards with their coffee. I think on the box it says the best latte I've ever had. So thinking about that and in terms of what's going on with the pressure on that would be interesting. And then certainly cooking chemistry is a really fun avenue. And I thought about that when we first started closing down campus, like, can we just do some kitchen chemistry? And yeah, we could probably, let me think on that, Hannah and Alex. Let me think on those options, and maybe do one of those instead of an ICA. I don't know, you guys. I don't. Sure, there wouldn't be too many people that would argue against that, but yeah, I'll think about it. And if campuses, I don't know if any of you guys are taking Chem 103, but that'll be with me again. And if campus is still closed, then we might have to get more creative.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, I will. I'll see you all Thursday. Remember that we have our journal club, so don't forget to read those papers and write your critique and turn it in before our discussion. Okay. And it's snowing out there pretty heavily, so for those of you in Tahoe, if you have to go out, please be careful. Okay. And have a good evening. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Awesome. Thank you.